A social contract. Social contract theory has been a topic that philosophers have argued about for millennia. How should we be governed? What rights do citizens have? What should we consent to from those who govern us? There are many philosophers, including Plato, Thomas Hobbes, and Edmund Burke, who believe we should only be governed by an elite who are somewhat removed from society so as to be above corruption. A noble thought experiment, but not acceptable in today's idea of democracy, one might think. How does this relate to my previous thoughts on free markets? Simply put, without a stable and well-governed society, free markets seize up under cronyism, corruption, corporate rent-seeking, and a lack of legal framework to enforce contracts and property rights. So how do we get to equality of opportunity in a society? High levels of unemployment brought about by high taxes, low growth, and swathes of regulation all conspire to cripple a society and compound the causes for low levels of social mobility, which reduces equality of opportunity. Allowing people the freedom to pursue their ends is the goal here, and this is aided by nothing more elegant than market forces. By working to solve our material needs without interference with equality of opportunity, people can coexist in relative peace and harmony. If the state is smaller, then by definition, taxes should be lower, and people have more in their pockets to improve their lot. Next, we're going to look at Edmund Burke's eternal contract. Citizenship and participation in civic life has many obligations as well as rights. Famously, Edmund Burke talked about looking beyond just those around us as our obligations. Society is indeed a contract. It is a partnership in all science, a partnership in all art, a partnership in every virtue, and in all perfection. As the ends of such a partnership cannot be obtained in many generations, it becomes a partnership not only between those who are living, but between those who are dead, those who are to be born. So, question is, do we need Leviathan again per Thomas Hobbes? We're next going to look back at one of the earliest and perhaps most famous social contract theorists, Thomas Hobbes. The role of the sovereign that Hobbes outlines in Leviathan is to enshrine laws that promote peace, stability, and the good of society. Hobbes, who lived during the chaos of the English Civil War, was concerned that without a strong ruler, society would regress into a state of chaos. And I'm going to give you a couple of quotes here, but note that these are from the original text, which is Oldie English. And the life of man, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, which is how the social contract that Hobbes advocates for needs the submission of one's individual will to prevent this chaos. To confer all their power and strength upon one man or upon one assembly of man, that may reduce all their wills by plurality of voices unto one will. And then, having made this agreement, society becomes orderly. This done, the multitude so united in one person is called a commonwealth. In Latin, civitas. That should be a term we're familiar with. By handing over rights to the absolute rule of this person or body, Hobbes believes people will in return gain self-preservation. Much as any contract has two or more parties entering into an agreement that has terms to be enforced. How does this famous work of philosophy from 1651 relate to us today, I wonder? Sounds pretty alien, right? Another prominent social contract advocate was John Locke, who famously said, "The great and chief end of men putting themselves under government is the preservation of their property." In effect, whether we signed up for it or not, our UK culture and traditions have been fine-tuned over the centuries to remove absolute power from a monarch on one hand and transfer it to a government that runs for about a 5-year term. So has this solved the need for a social contract? Roger Scruton, perhaps with the tired eyes of a modern philosopher, sees a social contract as a fiction that hides the empty heart of modern politics. He also asserts in his book Modern Culture that Burke thought that a social contract was a terrible idea in revolutionary France by severing the link between the dead and the unborn upon making the people sovereign with the new republic. So what's the impact of globalization then on a social contract? Is global governance against a social contract? Does tolerance and multiculturalism undermine John Rawls's statement that social cooperation is always for mutual benefit? Fair terms of cooperation articulate an idea of reciprocity and mutuality. All who cooperate must benefit or share in common burdens. Can this be achieved with a society that doesn't have a shared sense of common or mutual understanding, we have to ask. And then lastly, culture as a form of social contract. The preservation of a culture and its traditions is surely the best bulwark against simple all-out competition between citizens if free markets are to have a reasonable counterbalance along with a shot at the good life, which is very much the theme of these series of videos. This is very much in contrast to an unconstrained vision, which doesn't value history very highly, nor tradition or culture. Culture also goes against the grain of globalization, with its tendency to try and flatten cultures to make the world into a single marketplace. With shared values and a story to unite society, people are more likely to live in relative peace and harmony, or Rawls's reciprocity and mutuality. It would be great if the UK could look forward and remember its partnership with the living and the unborn and not give up on itself, especially how much it has brought to the world.